Last night, as the house settled into its familiar quiet, my daughter's tiny voice broke through the stillness. It was a question that seemed simple at first, almost naive in its phrasing, yet it carried a weight I could hardly bear to hear. She asked, "Mama, why does the woman in my mirror cry when I smile?" At that moment, I froze. I didn't respond right away because I needed to truly understand what she had just asked. It wasn't just a child's imagination or a fleeting curiosity. It was a profound observation, a delicate insight into the subtle complexities of human emotion. Children often notice things adults overlook. They see the shadows behind the laughter, the tremble behind the calm face, the storm behind the gentle smile. Their innocence allows them to perceive truths that we, in our grown-up routines and self-protective habits, often try to hide from ourselves. My daughter's question reminded me of this fact in a way that was both heartbreaking and enlightening. When a child asks a question like that, it is not merely about what is visible on the surface. It is about noticing the invisible, the undercurrent of feelings that are too heavy to speak aloud, even for those who live within their own experiences of pain. My daughter, in all her youthful simplicity, had noticed something I had tried to conceal for years. She had seen past my forced smiles, past my gentle laughter, past the words I spoke to comfort her even when I felt empty inside. She had seen the reflection of a mother who carries burdens no one else sees. And in her tiny observation, she revealed what I had long been denying, that pain can exist behind joy, that sadness can linger in silence, and that sometimes the truest form of suffering is the one that hides in plain sight. Innocence in this sense is a powerful lens. Children do not overthink, they do not rationalize, they do not tell themselves that what they see must be ignored or misunderstood. Their observations are pure, unfiltered, and genuine. They sense discord not through analysis but through instinct. My daughter had looked into the mirror and seen me, not as a perfect parent, not as the smiling, reassuring figure I present to the world, but as a human being shaped by both joy and sorrow. She noticed the tremor behind my eyes, the tension in my shoulders, the faint curve of sadness etched into my face even as I tried to smile. That innocent question was not simply about a mirror or a reflection. It was a recognition of the truth that I had long hidden from myself and everyone around me. It is remarkable how children can uncover hidden truths in ways adults rarely can. While we spend so much time constructing facades, explaining away our emotions, and convincing ourselves that everything is under control, children perceive the cracks. They feel the vibration of tension in the air, they notice the shadows that linger after a forced laugh, and they hear the silence that screams louder than any words. My daughter's curiosity was a gentle, persistent force that demanded honesty. It demanded that I face what I had been avoiding, my own pain. And in that moment, I realized how easily innocence can pierce through the layers we carefully construct around ourselves, revealing what we try so hard to hide. Pain often manifests in subtle ways. It does not always announce itself with dramatic gestures or loud complaints. Sometimes it hides in the corners of our daily lives, wrapped in small routines, tucked into fleeting moments, concealed behind smiles and laughter. As adults, we have become adept at disguising our struggles, presenting a polished exterior to the world while our inner selves quietly bear the weight of worry, grief, or loss. But children, in their untainted perception, detect the dissonance between what is presented and what is true. They sense when a smile is merely a mask and when laughter is a fragile veil over tears. That is exactly what my daughter had done. Her observation was not born of cynicism or suspicion. It was born of pure, unfiltered perception, a reflection of her innate ability to see the emotional landscape that adults often overlook. This innocent curiosity is, in many ways, a form of wisdom. It teaches us that the world is not always as it appears, that the surface can hide depths we are afraid to acknowledge, and that the human heart carries stories that demand to be recognized. My daughter's question forced me to confront my own vulnerability, my own unspoken grief, and the emotional labor I carry as a mother and as a woman navigating life's challenges. It reminded me that acknowledging pain does not diminish strength. Rather, it validates the human experience. Her words were a gentle awakening, a mirror held up not just to me, but to the unspoken struggles that so many of us endure silently. Innocence in its purest form has a way of cutting through denial. It does not judge, it does not criticize, it simply observes and asks questions that demand reflection. Children are not bound by societal expectations or the pressure to appear strong or composed. They live in a realm of honesty and authenticity, where emotions are felt deeply and expressed freely. When my daughter asked about the woman in the mirror, she was inviting a conversation that transcended mere words. She was creating a space for truth, a moment of connection, and a recognition that it is okay to feel, to question, and to acknowledge the complexity of our emotions. There is a profound beauty in such moments. They remind us of the importance of presence, of truly seeing and being seen. My daughter's curiosity was a gift, a reminder that even in the midst of our daily struggles, there are opportunities for clarity, connection, and understanding. It revealed that pain, when observed with innocence and empathy, can become a bridge rather than a burden, a way to connect, to share, and to heal. Her simple question held within it the power to transform my perspective, to encourage reflection, and to inspire a deeper appreciation for the subtleties of human emotion. In that quiet moment, I understood that my daughter had done something remarkable. Through her innocent curiosity, she had illuminated the hidden layers of human experience, the silent struggles that often go unnoticed, and the emotional truths that we try so hard to conceal. She had reminded me that pain is not always loud or visible, that sorrow can coexist with joy, and that the reflections we hide from ourselves are sometimes the most important to acknowledge. Her question was more than a fleeting inquiry. It was a gentle revelation, a call to honesty, and a reminder that innocence has a power all its own, the power to reveal, to connect, and to awaken the heart to truths we may have long ignored. As I held her close and felt the warmth of her tiny hands in mine, I realized that her observation was a lesson in compassion, empathy, and emotional intelligence. It was a moment that transcended words, a teaching that could not be found in books or lectures, but only in the raw, unfiltered perception of a child who sees the world with honesty and clarity. My daughter had shown me that innocence is not naive. It is perceptive, insightful, and deeply wise. Through her question, she had revealed the profound reality that sometimes the simplest inquiries carry the deepest truths, and that by listening with our hearts, we can begin to understand the hidden landscapes of emotion that shape our lives. When my daughter asked, "Mama, why does the woman in my mirror cry when I smile?" I could have easily dismissed it as the musings of a child, an imaginative observation not meant to carry any weight. But I didn't, because the truth is, mirrors are never just mirrors. They are silent witnesses to the truth we sometimes refuse to see, holding up reflections not only of our outward appearance, but of the emotions, histories, and hidden stories that live within us. That woman in the mirror, the one my daughter was speaking of, was more than just her own image or my own. She was the embodiment of a life, a collection of experiences, regrets, joys, and pains that had shaped every line, every expression, and every tremor in our faces. In that reflection, a metaphor unfolded so perfectly that it was impossible to ignore. The mirror had become a portal into the soul, revealing what words often fail to capture. The idea of a mirror as a metaphor is both simple and profound. On the surface, a mirror reflects what is physically present, the curve of a cheek, the shape of eyes, the gentle tilt of a head. Yet, beneath that physical reflection lies a deeper truth. Mirrors capture the echoes of emotion. They hold the residue of our days, our moments of sorrow, our flashes of happiness, and even the traces of unresolved grief. When my daughter looked into the mirror and saw a woman crying, she wasn't imagining a magical image or an ethereal apparition. She was witnessing a truth that the mirror could not conceal, a truth that had seeped into my very being, reflected in ways that a child's eyes could perceive with startling clarity. That mirror was speaking a language that went beyond words, a language of emotion, of human vulnerability, of the unspoken weight that we often carry alone. Mirrors as metaphors have long existed in stories, poetry, and spiritual teachings. They are often described as symbols of self-reflection, self-awareness, and truth. They force us to confront ourselves in ways that no other object can. We look into them and see our appearance, yes, but we also see ourselves, the parts of us that we wish to hide, the memories that linger in the corners of our minds, the pain that hides behind our smiles. In that moment with my daughter, I realized that the mirror had become a storyteller, narrating a silent history of my life, my struggles, and my emotions. It was not just reflecting my face, it was reflecting my heart, my soul, and the accumulation of years of experiences that had molded me into the woman my daughter now perceived. There is a unique vulnerability in being reflected in this way. When we look into a mirror, we expect to see the surface, the external, polished version of ourselves, but sometimes the mirror reveals what we cannot or will not articulate. It holds up the raw, unfiltered truth of our existence. The woman my daughter saw crying was not a figment of her imagination. She was me. She was every sleepless night, every moment of self-doubt, every experience of heartbreak or disappointment that I had carried quietly. And in seeing this, my daughter had pierced through the layers of composure, seeing what often goes unnoticed by the people around us. In a child's gaze, the metaphor of the mirror is fully realized. It is not just a tool for vanity. It is a vessel of truth, a reflection of life's complexities, and a testament to the human spirit. What is remarkable about this metaphor is how it conveys the duality of human experience. My daughter saw both joy and sorrow simultaneously, the smile that adorned her face and the tears that lingered in mine. It is a reminder that our external expressions are not always aligned with our internal reality. We can laugh even when we ache. We can speak words of encouragement even when our hearts are heavy. And we can carry burdens quietly even as the world believes us to be carefree. The mirror does not lie. It shows the entirety of our existence, the contrast between what we project and what we truly feel. And in that reflection, there is a lesson for all of us, that our inner world is as real, as vivid, and as important as our outward appearance, and sometimes it is a child who reminds us of this truth. Children, in their innocent perception, are uniquely equipped to understand this metaphor without needing it explained. They do not require philosophical reasoning or psychological terminology. They observe, they feel, and they ask questions that cut straight to the heart of matters adults often complicate. My daughter's inquiry about the woman in the mirror was not about vanity, nor was it about magic or imagination. It was about recognizing that reflections are more than skin, deep. They are mirrors of emotion, empathy, and experience. In her simplicity, she had articulated a truth that I had spent years trying to understand, that the human soul is visible if we only know how to look, that pain and joy can coexist in a single expression, and that mirrors have the power to reveal what we sometimes fear to confront. This metaphor also speaks to the notion of self-awareness. By looking into a mirror, we are invited to see ourselves honestly. But seeing oneself is not just about acknowledging physical appearance. It is about confronting our feelings, our fears, and the fragments of our identity we may neglect or deny. When my daughter observed the woman crying, she unknowingly invited me into a moment of self-reflection. The mirror was not just a passive object, it was an active participant in a dialogue about life, emotion, and authenticity. It compelled me to face the truths I had tucked away, the quiet moments of sorrow I had endured alone, and the strength it took to continue smiling even when my heart felt heavy. It was a silent teacher, showing me that to truly know oneself, one must be willing to confront the reflection not just on the surface, but within the depths. There is a spiritual dimension to this metaphor as well. Mirrors have often been described as portals, connecting the visible and invisible worlds, the conscious and subconscious, the physical and emotional realms. They reflect not only what is, but what has been, what lingers, and what could be. In seeing the woman in the mirror, my daughter had glimpsed the layers of my life that are usually hidden, the emotions that are not spoken aloud, and the depth of experience that forms a human being. It was a reminder that mirrors do not merely reflect, they reveal, they teach, and they illuminate truths that words cannot fully express. The woman crying behind the smile was a testament to the complexity of existence, a visible symbol of the invisible struggles that define the human journey. Finally, the metaphor of the mirror challenges us to embrace authenticity. It encourages us to recognize our emotions, acknowledge our struggles, and accept ourselves fully, without pretense or denial. When my daughter noticed the tears behind the smile, she was not judging, criticizing, or condemning. She was simply witnessing truth in its purest form. And in that witness, there is profound wisdom. The mirror, like life itself, reflects what is real, and only by embracing that reality can we begin to heal, grow, and connect deeply with ourselves and those around us. It is in these reflections, both literal and metaphorical, that we find the courage to face our inner world, to acknowledge our pain, and to celebrate our humanity in its entirety. The moment my daughter asked, "Mama, why does the woman in my mirror cry when I smile?" I felt something inside me shatter in the most subtle yet profound way. At first, it was a flicker of unease, a small pang of recognition that someone so innocent, had seen through the carefully constructed layers of my life. But very quickly, that flicker grew into a tidal wave of realization. It hit me with the quiet force of truth, the kind of truth that doesn't announce itself with thunder, but seeps into your soul, leaving no corner untouched. I realized in that instant that my daughter was not just asking a question about a reflection. She was pointing directly at a sorrow I had hidden from the world, even from myself, a pain that I had carefully tucked behind smiles, laughter, and daily routines, thinking it was invisible. She had uncovered it with the purest form of perception, innocence. The heartbreak of realization is not always loud. Sometimes it is quiet, almost imperceptible. It is that pause when the air seems to thicken, when your chest tightens, and your mind races to acknowledge what your heart has been trying to hide. That night, as I looked at my daughter's eyes, so wide, so honest, I could no longer deny the truth of what she had seen. She had glimpsed a sorrow that I had worked so hard to conceal. All the evenings I spent forcing a smile, all the nights I cried alone when she was asleep, all the times I laughed at the dinner table while my heart ached, they had not gone unnoticed. A child's perception, unburdened by cynicism or distraction, had pierced through my defenses, and in that piercing, I felt a heartbreak unlike any other, the realization that even my attempts at shielding her from pain could not mask it completely. There is a unique kind of grief in being seen in this way. It is not just the grief of recognizing your own suffering, but the grief of realizing that those you love, those you try to protect, have already sensed it. Children, in their extraordinary innocence, often understand more than we think. They are sensitive to nuance, tone, and subtle shifts in expression. They can feel when a heart is heavy, even if the words spoken are gentle and careful. My daughter had felt the tremor in my soul, the silent burden that had been weighing me down for years, and she had expressed it in a way that only children can, with a simple, unassuming question that carries the weight of truth. Her words were not accusatory, they were observational, and yet they were devastating because they forced me to confront the very reality I had been avoiding. It is heartbreaking to realize that the walls we build around our emotions are not always as impermeable as we believe. We live with the illusion that we can shield ourselves and those we love from pain, that if we smile enough, laugh enough, and speak gently enough, our inner struggles will remain hidden. But children do not operate under such illusions. They perceive the authenticity of emotion in ways adults often cannot. They recognize the cracks in our facades, the tremble in our voices, the fleeting shadows that cross our eyes. My daughter's observation was proof of this. She had seen the cracks in my carefully constructed armor and pointed to them with an innocence that left no room for denial. The heartbreak I felt was in acknowledging that the pain I thought was mine alone had always been visible to her, even before I admitted it to myself. There is also a sense of sorrow in realizing the missed opportunities to share, to connect, and to express vulnerability. As adults, we often believe that exposing our pain is a weakness, that to show sorrow is to risk judgment or rejection. We convince ourselves that our struggles must remain private, hidden behind polite smiles and polite conversation. But in that moment, I understood the profound irony of my own behavior. My daughter, with her untainted honesty, had invited me to share a truth that I had long withheld. She had offered me a chance to acknowledge my pain openly, to be seen fully, and to connect deeply in a way that could have nurtured both of us. Yet I had missed the signs, thinking my burdens were invisible, thinking that by hiding them I was protecting her. And the heartbreak of realization is rooted in that awareness that in our efforts to protect, we may inadvertently distance ourselves from the very hearts we wish to shield. The pain of this realization is compounded by the sudden clarity of understanding. In that quiet moment, I could see everything. The nights I cried silently, the moments I whispered reassurances while feeling empty inside, the times I forced joy onto my face like a mask, hoping no one would notice the tremor beneath. All of it was reflected back to me through my daughter's eyes, and it was impossible to ignore. There is a particular grief in being confronted by the truth of oneself through another's perception, especially when that someone is a child who loves you unconditionally. Her question was a mirror in its own right, not just reflecting my exterior, but revealing my interior, the hidden sorrow, the silent struggles, the emotional turbulence I thought was private. And that realization, the heartbreak of it, was a moment that shifted something deep inside me. There is also an element of responsibility intertwined with heartbreak. When a child perceives your pain, you feel both the weight of your own emotions and the responsibility to navigate them with care. You realize that your struggles ripple outward, even in ways you had not anticipated. My daughter's innocent question reminded me that emotions are contagious, that the energy we carry, whether joy, sadness, or tension, affects those around us, especially the ones who love us most deeply. The heartbreak of realization is recognizing that your pain, while deeply personal, is also shared in subtle ways. It is not only about what we feel, but about how our inner state touches the hearts of others, particularly those who are most attuned to us. And yet, within this heartbreak lies a seed of transformation. The very recognition of pain is the first step toward healing, toward connection, and toward authenticity. In that quiet living room, as I knelt to embrace my daughter, I understood that heartbreak is not just sorrow. It is awareness, it is awakening, it is the invitation to confront what has been hidden for too long. The woman crying in the mirror was not a symbol of weakness. She was a symbol of truth, a testament to the human experience, and a reminder that vulnerability can be shared without fear. The heartbreak of realization, then, becomes not only a moment of grief, but also a moment of clarity, an opportunity to bridge the gap between hidden pain and heartfelt connection. Every parent wishes to protect their child from sorrow, yet the irony is that it is often through children that we are confronted with our own deepest truths. Their innocence does not allow for pretense. It exposes the raw, unvarnished realities that we try to keep hidden. My daughter's question about the crying woman in the mirror was a gentle but powerful wake-up call. It reminded me that the heartbreak of realization is not a punishment but a revelation. It is the moment when truth pierces through illusion, when innocence sees what experience sometimes blinds us to, and when the human heart is given an opportunity to respond, to heal, and to embrace authenticity. That night, the heartbreak of realization was both painful and illuminating. It reminded me that life is a series of reflections of ourselves, our emotions, and our connections. It showed me that hiding behind a smile may shield the world, but it cannot hide the truth from those who love us and those who see with open, unfiltered eyes. My daughter had seen the truth, and in seeing it, she had offered me a gift, the chance to acknowledge my pain, to be honest with myself, and to begin the delicate process of healing not just for me, but for both of us. The heartbreak of realization is not simply about sorrow. It is about awakening, about recognition, and about the profound, often painful beauty of being truly seen. When my daughter looked into the mirror and asked, "Mama, why does the woman in my mirror cry when I smile?" I realized that her question was not just about what she saw in the reflection. It was about a connection that transcends age, experience, and understanding. There is something profoundly beautiful and transformative in the way children perceive the world, a purity in their ability to feel and empathize that is unburdened by life's cynicism or bias. Generational empathy is this extraordinary capacity for one generation to sense, understand, and resonate with the emotional world of another, and my daughter, in that simple question, was teaching me a lesson I had never expected to learn. She was showing me that empathy is not something that is acquired only through years of experience or struggle, but that it can also exist naturally, instinctively, and with remarkable clarity in the hearts of the young. Children are inherently tuned into emotion. Their minds and hearts are like finely tuned instruments, sensitive to vibrations that adults often overlook. They pick up on subtleties in tone, body language, and expression, often before the words are even spoken. I had spent countless years trying to hide my pain, carefully constructing smiles and pleasant conversation to shield her from the burdens I carried, believing that my sorrow was something she should never witness. Yet she saw it anyway. Her innocent question revealed that she had sensed not just the external signs of distress, but the deeper emotional reality I had been trying to conceal. This is the essence of generational empathy, a recognition, sometimes instinctual, of the emotional truths in another human being, even when those truths are wrapped in layers of concealment. What strikes me most about this moment is the depth of perception that exists across generations. While adults often rely on logic, reasoning, or social cues to interpret emotion, children rely on a pure, unfiltered connection to feelings. My daughter did not ask her question out of curiosity alone. She asked it because she felt the dissonance between my smile and my internal sorrow. She experienced it emotionally, without the filters of judgment, societal expectation, or the need to rationalize. This capacity for empathy is instinctual, and it reminds us that understanding does not always require words. Generational empathy allows emotions to transcend age and experience, creating connections that are profound precisely because they are instinctive and untainted. In that quiet moment, I understood that my daughter was acting as a mirror for my own soul. Just as the literal mirror reflected my external appearance, her observation reflected my internal state. She was seeing what I had tried to hide from everyone, including myself. And in that act of seeing, she was offering a gift of empathy that only a child can give. She was validating my emotions without judgment, simply acknowledging their existence. This validation is a rare and precious thing, one that often takes adults a lifetime to fully appreciate. Through her question, she demonstrated that emotional awareness and understanding can exist across generations in ways that are deeply profound, even when words are scarce. Generational empathy also challenges the assumption that children are too young or too inexperienced to understand complex human emotions. Society often underestimates the perceptive capacity of the young, believing that they cannot comprehend pain, grief, or subtle emotional nuances. But children possess a remarkable ability to sense the internal emotional landscape of those around them. My daughter, by noticing the sadness behind my smile, displayed an awareness that many adults struggle to articulate or even recognize. She showed me that empathy is not solely the result of age or experience. It is the natural resonance of a heart attuned to the feelings of others, a resonance that is often sharper in children precisely because they have not yet been dulled by the weight of life's distractions and judgments. There is also a lesson in humility embedded in generational empathy. As a parent, I had assumed that I was the one teaching, guiding, and nurturing my child's emotional development. I believed that I was the one responsible for modeling resilience, composure, and understanding. Yet in that moment, I realized that my daughter, in her unassuming way, was teaching me just as much as I hoped to teach her. She was reminding me of the power of sensitivity, the importance of noticing subtle emotions, and the value of responding to feelings with care and attention. Empathy is a two-way street, and generational empathy illustrates that children can teach adults profound truths about compassion, awareness, and emotional presence. Moreover, this moment revealed how empathy strengthens the bonds between generations. When a child senses and acknowledges the emotional state of a parent, a unique connection forms, a bridge of understanding and trust that transcends words. My daughter's question was more than an inquiry. It was an expression of care, a recognition of my emotional world, and an invitation to share. This bridge of empathy fosters a deeper emotional intimacy, one in which vulnerability is not met with fear or judgment, but with love and attentiveness. It is a reminder that empathy is not passive. It is active engagement, a conscious or unconscious effort to connect with the feelings of another, and when it crosses generational lines, it becomes a transformative experience for both the giver and receiver. Another dimension of generational empathy lies in its capacity to inspire self-awareness. When someone else, especially a child, perceives our emotions so clearly, it forces us to reflect on our own state of being. My daughter's question prompted me to examine not only the sorrow she saw, but the reasons I had hidden it, the patterns I had formed to shield both her and myself, and the ways in which my internal struggles had quietly shaped our shared environment. Empathy from a younger generation can act as a mirror for adults, reflecting not just our external behavior, but the emotional truths we sometimes avoid. It offers the opportunity for growth, introspection, and a deeper understanding of our own hearts, often sparking transformations that are subtle yet profound. Finally, the beauty of generational empathy is its simplicity. It does not require complex reasoning or intellectual understanding. It exists in the quiet observation of a child, in a question asked with curiosity and care, and in the willingness to see another's emotional reality without judgment. My daughter's question was a perfect example of this simplicity. Through her innocent perception, she demonstrated that empathy can cross age and experience, that children can sense the unspoken emotions of adults, and that these connections can be transformative for both parties. It is a reminder that emotional intelligence is not only cultivated through years of life experience, but is also innate, particularly in those whose hearts have not yet been clouded by the world's cynicism or distraction. As I held her in my arms and reflected on her question, I understood that generational empathy is a gift, a bridge, and a source of profound connection. It reminds us that children, in their innocence, can perceive what adults may struggle to articulate, that empathy is not bound by age, and that emotional awareness can exist naturally and powerfully across generations. It is a quiet, luminous force, one that teaches, heals, and binds us together, reminding us that the hearts of the young often carry wisdom far beyond their years. In that moment, I felt a gratitude that is difficult to put into words, a recognition that empathy, when it flows freely between generations, has the power to transform not only relationships, but the very way we understand ourselves and the world around us. There is a certain kind of pain that exists quietly, almost invisibly, in the spaces between our words, in the pauses between laughter, and in the shadows behind our smiles. It is a pain that is not dramatic, not loud, not demanding of attention. It does not announce itself to the world or demand validation. It simply exists, woven into the quiet rhythm of everyday life, carried in the subtle tremor of a hand, the faint tension of a shoulder, or the eyes that seem to shimmer with unspoken sorrow. For years, I believed that my silent cries were mine alone, that no one could see them, and that they were somehow less significant because they were private. Yet in that quiet evening, when my daughter asked, "Mama, why does the woman in my mirror cry when I smile?" I realized how wrong I had been. Silent cries are never truly unnoticed. They are simply waiting for someone with the heart to perceive them. The heartbreak of silent suffering is that it often goes unrecognized, even by those closest to us. We carry burdens with the hope that others will not notice, or perhaps with the belief that if we endure quietly, the pain will be more bearable. We smile to hide the tears, laugh to hide the ache, and speak words of reassurance while our hearts are heavy with unspoken grief. I had done this countless times, trying to protect my daughter from the weight of my own struggles, believing that a mother's pain must remain hidden to shield her child. But children have a remarkable way of sensing what lies beneath the surface. My daughter's observation revealed that even the quietest suffering leaves traces, impressions that ripple outward in ways we may not anticipate. Silent cries, though unvoiced, have their own language, and some hearts, especially the hearts of children, are attuned to hear it. There is a subtle power in noticing silence. When someone sees beyond words, when they perceive the hidden tremors of emotion, they offer an understanding that is more profound than any spoken consolation. My daughter, in her innocence, perceived my sorrow in a way that no adult had asked me to acknowledge, and no friend had fully grasped. She did not need me to explain, justify, or rationalize my feelings. She simply observed, and in that observation, she validated the existence of pain that had been quietly living inside me. The recognition of silent suffering is itself an act of empathy and love. It tells us that no matter how quiet our pain may be, it matters, it is seen, and it has the power to touch others in ways that are gentle yet transformative. Silent cries often carry layers of complexity. They are rarely about a single event. They are accumulations of disappointment, heartbreak, exhaustion, and unspoken fear. They exist in the tension of responsibilities that seem endless, in the unfulfilled dreams tucked away, and in the quiet ache of unshared experiences. For many, like myself, these cries are woven into the fabric of daily life. I carried them while preparing meals, while tucking my daughter into bed, while smiling through conversations that seemed ordinary but required every ounce of composure I could summon. I believed these tears went unnoticed because they were not loud or visible, because they did not disrupt the routines of life or demand attention. Yet my daughter, with her untainted perception, saw them instantly. She understood in her own innocent way that pain does not always need to be spoken to exist, and that even the smallest expressions, a faltering smile, a quiet glance, can carry volumes of unexpressed emotion. It is a curious and humbling realization that the quietest moments are sometimes the most telling. When we cry silently, we often imagine that the world remains unaware that our suffering is contained. But silence has a language of its own, and some hearts are capable of interpreting it with uncanny clarity. Children, in particular, are sensitive to this language because they are not yet conditioned to ignore or rationalize it. They notice the pauses, the hesitations, the micro expressions that adults dismiss or overlook. My daughter's question revealed the truth. Silent cries leave footprints. They may not be shouted from rooftops, but they are felt, they are observed, and they leave a mark on those who care enough to see. In this realization, there is both sorrow and beauty. The sorrow of recognizing how often silent suffering goes unacknowledged, and the beauty of discovering that empathy and perception exist even in the youngest, most innocent hearts. The invisibility of silent suffering often brings with it a sense of isolation. We believe that if our pain is unspoken, it is unshared, and therefore it is ours alone to bear. We think that by enduring quietly, we protect ourselves and others from discomfort. I had lived under this assumption for years, believing that my daughter's happiness depended on my ability to mask the sorrow within me. Yet her innocent perception revealed a different truth. Silence does not isolate us from those who are willing to truly see. Pain, even when silent, communicates in subtle ways. A child's question, a friend's gentle observation, or a partner's attentive gaze can break through the layers of quiet suffering, allowing connection, understanding, and healing to occur. In other words, silent cries may feel invisible, but they are never truly lost. They are a language that invites listening, if only someone is willing to pay attention. There is also a profound lesson in the way silent cries shape our relationships. When someone recognizes our unspoken pain, it creates a bond that transcends words. My daughter's awareness of my hidden sorrow was not just an observation, it was an act of empathy and care. It allowed me to feel seen, to know that my emotions mattered, and to understand that our unspoken struggles can influence and shape the lives of those we love. Silent suffering is not merely a private experience, it is relational. Even in the quietest, most concealed moments, our emotions communicate, ripple, and impact the people around us. When they are noticed, they foster connection, understanding, and compassion in ways that loud complaints or dramatic expressions cannot achieve. Silent cries also carry within them the power of resilience, the act of enduring quietly, of continuing to function despite inner turmoil, demonstrates an extraordinary strength that often goes unacknowledged. Yet, paradoxically, these silent struggles are also a call for recognition. They remind us that even the strongest hearts need to be seen, that vulnerability need not be loud to be significant, and that our emotional truth deserves acknowledgement. My daughter, in seeing the tears behind my smile, offered precisely that acknowledgement. She bore witness to my quiet suffering, affirming its existence and validating the emotional reality that I had carried alone for so long. This simple act reinforced the idea that empathy, perception, and recognition can bridge the gap between isolation and understanding, even when no words are spoken. Finally, silent cries remind us of the universality of human experience. Everyone carries burdens that are hidden, sorrows that are unspoken, and struggles that remain invisible to the world. They manifest in small ways: a faltering glance, a slight hesitation, a quiet sigh. They exist in every household, behind every smile, and within every heart. My daughter's perception was a poignant reminder that acknowledging these silent cries, both in ourselves and in others, is an essential part of compassion. By noticing, validating, and responding to the unspoken pain of those around us, we create a world in which empathy transcends words, where love is expressed not only in grand gestures but in attentive observation, and where no sorrow, no matter how quiet, is ever truly unnoticed. When my daughter asked, "Mama, why does the woman in my mirror cry when I smile?" I felt a stirring inside me that was both startling and undeniable. It was as though her simple, innocent question had pried open a door I hadn't realized I'd been holding closed for years. For a moment, I simply stared, unsure how to respond, not because I lacked words, but because I recognized that her observation was pointing to something far deeper than a literal reflection. It was pointing to a truth I had not fully faced, the layers of emotion, exhaustion, and longing that had quietly accumulated within me. In that moment, I experienced what I can only describe as an emotional awakening, a profound realization that being a parent is not just about guiding, protecting, and nurturing, but also about acknowledging the complexity of your own humanity and the influence it has on those you love. Parenthood often demands strength, resilience, and composure. We learn almost instinctively to prioritize the needs of our children above our own, to smooth over our own struggles, and to present a front of stability and security even when our hearts are heavy. For years I had carried my sorrows privately, tucked away behind polite smiles, cheerful reassurances, and routines designed to create an atmosphere of calm and safety. I believed that shielding my daughter from my pain was an act of love, a way to ensure her innocence and happiness. Yet, in that quiet evening, I understood that my silence had created an unspoken tension, a subtle but persistent presence of emotion that she could sense even if I could not articulate it. Her question was a mirror in itself, reflecting not just my physical appearance, but the truth of my emotional state. And in that reflection, I began to awaken to a new awareness of myself as both a parent and a human being. Emotional awakening, in this context, is a sudden and powerful recognition of one's own inner world and its effects on others. It is the realization that our emotions are not contained in us. They ripple outward, touching those around us, particularly the ones we love most deeply. My daughter's words forced me to confront the reality that the weight I carried, though unspoken, was evident in ways I had failed to acknowledge. I realized that my attempts at composure, while intended to protect her, had also created a subtle dissonance that her perceptive heart could not ignore. In this awakening, I became aware of the delicate balance between hiding our struggles and allowing ourselves to be seen, between protecting our children and teaching them empathy through honest emotional expression. Children have an extraordinary capacity to act as catalysts for emotional awareness. Their innocence and openness often allow them to sense truths that adults overlook or suppress. My daughter's observation illuminated the fact that she had been attuned to the nuances of my emotional state for longer than I had realized. It was as if she had been quietly absorbing the tremors beneath my smile, the tension behind my laughter, and the subtle heaviness in my voice, and had now articulated what her heart had already known. In this sense, her question was not just a call for understanding, but a gentle awakening for me, a prompt to examine, recognize, and embrace my own emotions, and to consider how they shape my relationship with her and with the world around me. This awakening also carries with it a profound sense of responsibility. As a parent, one often assumes the role of protector, believing that shielding children from pain and difficulty is paramount. Yet emotional awakening teaches us that authenticity and vulnerability are equally important. By acknowledging and embracing our own feelings, we model emotional intelligence, resilience, and self-awareness for our children. In that moment, I realized that my daughter's question was inviting me to step beyond the roles and masks I had assumed, to engage with her from a place of honesty and shared humanity, and to demonstrate that emotions are not to be feared or hidden, but to be recognized, felt, and expressed with care. There is a quiet courage inherent in emotional awakening. It is the courage to confront feelings that we have long suppressed, to acknowledge the tension between our responsibilities and our desires, and to accept the complexity of our own hearts. When my daughter's words reached me, I felt both the vulnerability and the power of this courage. I understood that the tears she had seen behind my smile were not a sign of weakness, but of authenticity. They were proof that beneath the surface of daily life, beneath the routines and performances we maintain, there is a rich, complicated landscape of emotion that deserves recognition and respect. To awaken emotionally is to embrace that landscape and to allow it to inform our relationships, particularly the ones we hold most dear. An emotional awakening also fosters a new depth of empathy. By recognizing our own hidden struggles, we become more attuned to the emotions of others. My daughter's question revealed that she was already attuned to mine, but it also awakened a greater awareness within me of the subtle currents of feeling that flow between people. I began to notice the small signs of fatigue, sadness, or worry in others, the fleeting expressions of struggle that often go unnoticed, and the unspoken burdens carried silently by those we care for. This heightened empathy, born of self-awareness, allows us to connect more deeply with those around us, to respond with compassion, and to nurture emotional bonds that are built on understanding rather than pretense. Another aspect of this awakening is the realization that our children are mirrors of our own emotional lives. They reflect not only what we teach them consciously, but also what they absorb from our hidden struggles, attitudes, and emotional habits. My daughter's perception was a mirror not only for me, but for the environment we create together. It reminded me that the emotional climate of a home, shaped by unspoken feelings and quiet burdens, is sensed and internalized by children. Emotional awakening, therefore, is not just about self-discovery. It is about understanding the subtle influence we have on the hearts and minds of those we nurture, and taking conscious steps to engage with them with honesty, care, and empathy. In that moment, the emotional awakening felt both humbling and illuminating. It reminded me that being a parent is not solely about protection, guidance, and teaching. It is also about openness, vulnerability, and self-reflection. It revealed the profound responsibility we carry, not only to respond to the needs of our children, but also to recognize and tend to our own emotional health. My daughter's question was a quiet intervention, a gentle nudge that invited me to honor my own emotions, to embrace my humanity, and to cultivate a deeper, more authentic connection with her. It was an awakening to the truth that emotional awareness is not a luxury but a necessity, both for our own well-being and for the well-being of those we love. Finally, emotional awakening is transformative because it opens the door to deeper intimacy and trust. By recognizing our own feelings and allowing them to be seen, we create space for our children to do the same. We teach them that it is safe to express vulnerability, to acknowledge sorrow alongside joy, and to navigate the full spectrum of human emotion with courage and honesty. My daughter, through her innocent observation, had guided me to this realization. She had shown me that awakening emotionally is not a solitary journey. It is intertwined with the relationships we cultivate, especially those with the ones we hold most dearly. In her question, I found both revelation and invitation, a moment that would forever shape the way I approach not only parenting but life itself. When my daughter softly asked, "Mama, why does the woman in my mirror cry when I smile?" I felt a moment of profound stillness descend over me, as though the air itself had grown heavier, charged with an unspoken truth I could no longer deny. In that instant, I realized that healing, true deep healing, cannot begin until we acknowledge what we have been avoiding, what we have been hiding even from ourselves. For years, I had carried an invisible weight, a quiet sorrow I thought could remain hidden behind the surface of my life. I believed that if I smiled often enough, laughed convincingly, and reassured my daughter daily, the pain within me could be contained, tamed, and rendered harmless. But the moment her innocent question reached my ears, I understood the essential truth. To heal, we must first see, name, and acknowledge our own suffering. Until that acknowledgement occurs, the sorrow continues to linger, shaping our lives quietly, subtly, and powerfully. Acknowledgement is a profound act of courage. It requires the willingness to look inward honestly, to face emotions that are uncomfortable or even painful, and to resist the temptation to deflect, deny, or minimize them. When my daughter pointed out the tears behind my smile, she had unknowingly invited me to confront the truth I had avoided, that sorrow had been residing within me for years, hidden from the world, but never entirely invisible. The tears she noticed were not fabricated. They were real, tangible expressions of emotional strain, fatigue, and unresolved pain. In that moment, I understood that healing could only begin when I allowed myself to accept the presence of that pain, to acknowledge that it existed and that it mattered. Without this recognition, any attempt to move forward would be incomplete, superficial, or even self-deceptive. The process of acknowledgement begins with self-honesty. We must be willing to admit, first to ourselves and then to those we trust, the full scope of our feelings. For many of us, this is difficult because we fear judgment, rejection, or the burden of appearing vulnerable. As a mother, I had long believed that my emotions needed to be controlled, managed, and hidden to protect my child from worry. Yet my daughter's observation revealed that the very act of hiding does not erase our pain. It only postpones the necessary work of addressing it. Her words became a mirror, reflecting not only my sorrow, but also my avoidance of it. To heal, I had to embrace that honesty, to see my emotions without shame, and to give myself permission to acknowledge them fully. This act of self-recognition, while subtle, is the cornerstone of true healing. Acknowledgement also validates the emotions themselves. All too often, we dismiss our own pain as unworthy of attention, thinking that because it is silent, small, or private, it is insignificant. Yet our inner emotional world is never insignificant. Every tear, every ache, every quiet moment of grief carries meaning, history, and weight. By noticing and naming these feelings, we validate their existence and honor the experiences that have shaped us. When my daughter recognized the sadness in my reflection, she provided that validation without even intending to. She saw and acknowledged a truth I had been reluctant to admit to myself. Healing begins precisely at this intersection of recognition and validation. When we see the pain clearly and allow ourselves to feel it without denial or judgment. There is also a relational aspect to acknowledgement. Healing does not occur in isolation. It is intertwined with our connections to others, particularly those who love us. My daughter, in her innocent perception, offered me an unspoken invitation to share not only my pain, but also the process of understanding it together. Children, in their raw empathy, remind us that acknowledgement is not only an internal act, but also a relational one. By being seen, by having our emotions recognized, we create the conditions for healing to ripple outward into the relationships that matter most. In recognizing my sorrow, my daughter was not judging, blaming, or criticizing. She was simply witnessing it, and that witnessing became a catalyst for the healing process to begin in a gentle, profound, and authentic way. Acknowledgement also allows us to break patterns of emotional suppression. When pain is hidden for long periods, it often manifests in subtle, sometimes unintentional ways. Irritability, fatigue, distraction, or even physical symptoms that signal unresolved stress. I had lived with such hidden sorrow for years, believing that concealing it protected both myself and my daughter. Yet her observation revealed that suppressed emotions find their way into the spaces we believe are private. By acknowledging them openly, we disrupt the cycle of concealment, allowing ourselves to process emotions consciously and intentionally. In this way, acknowledgement acts as both a doorway and a shield. It opens the path to emotional healing while protecting us from the silent erosion caused by unprocessed feelings. Healing begins with acknowledgement because it bridges the gap between invisibility and visibility. Pain that is ignored or denied persists in the shadows, shaping behavior, perception, and relationships in subtle but powerful ways. When we recognize our emotions, we bring them into the light where they can be examined, understood, and transformed. My daughter's question served as a catalyst for this illumination. In her simple words, she made visible what had been invisible to me, the unspoken sorrow behind my smile, and in that visibility, a profound shift began to occur. What had been a hidden burden was now recognized, and the recognition itself became the first step toward release, understanding, and eventual healing. There is also a gentle, transformative power in acknowledging emotions in the presence of those we love. By allowing ourselves to be seen authentically, we teach empathy, resilience, and honesty by example. My daughter had already shown extraordinary empathy in noticing my hidden sorrow. By acknowledging it in return, I could model for her the courage to face one's emotions, the importance of self-awareness, and the value of emotional honesty. Healing, therefore, is not solely an individual journey. It is a shared, relational process. Through acknowledgement, we create a space where emotions can be felt safely, where understanding can flourish, and where connection deepens. In this way, acknowledgement becomes both a personal and a collective act of healing. Finally, acknowledgement transforms suffering into a pathway for growth. Recognizing pain is not an end in itself. It is the starting point for processing, understanding, and integrating the experiences that shape us. When my daughter noticed the woman in the mirror crying, she inadvertently guided me toward this transformation. By acknowledging my sorrow, I opened the door to emotional processing, reflection, and ultimately, a gentler, more compassionate approach to both myself and my daughter. Healing begins with acknowledgement because it creates the possibility for change, for growth, and for a fuller, richer engagement with life. It is the foundation upon which resilience, empathy, and emotional well-being are built. When my daughter looked into the mirror and asked, "Mama, why does the woman in my mirror cry when I smile?" I realized in that moment the extraordinary truth that a child can be a mirror, not merely of our physical selves, but of our emotions, our struggles, and the hidden corners of our hearts that we often believe are unseen. Children possess an unfiltered perception, a way of sensing that cuts through the layers of pretense we adults construct. They notice the tremor in our voice, the slight tension in our posture, the flicker of sorrow behind a carefully maintained smile. They see what we hope to conceal, not out of judgment or curiosity, but out of pure observation and empathy. In that question, my daughter had held up a mirror to me, not the kind that simply reflects outward appearance, but one that reflects the depths of experience, the echoes of pain, and the quiet resilience that lives beneath the surface. The child as a mirror is a concept that carries both beauty and responsibility. We often think of children as innocent and naive, untouched by the complexity of adult emotions. And while their innocence is real, their perceptiveness is equally profound. A child's mind is attuned to authenticity in ways that adults sometimes lose over time. They notice inconsistencies, subtleties, and emotional undercurrents that we assume are invisible. My daughter's question revealed not only her perception of my sorrow, but also her intuitive understanding that emotions have layers, that they are often hidden behind the expressions we show to the world. In her simple yet penetrating observation, I could see myself more clearly than I had in years. She reflected my truth back to me, unfiltered and undeniable. The mirror a child holds up is often gentle yet unrelenting. It does not offer judgment or critique. It simply shows what is there, asking only that it be acknowledged. My daughter's words were a quiet nudge toward self-awareness, a prompt to confront the emotions I had buried or ignored. She did not demand explanations, apologies, or solutions. She simply noticed, and in doing so, she reminded me that recognition is the first step toward transformation. A child's reflection is a gift precisely because it does not come burdened with adult biases, interpretations, or fears. It is pure observation, colored by empathy and honesty, offering an opportunity for introspection and growth. The child as a mirror also illuminates the invisible effects our emotions have on others. As parents, we often believe that our children are protected from our struggles as long as we maintain composure. We think that by hiding our tears, masking our stress, and presenting a cheerful exterior, we shield them from the complexities of adult life. But children are sensitive to what we cannot fully conceal. They pick up on expressions, tone shifts, and unspoken energies that reveal more than words ever could. My daughter, in noticing the tears behind my smile, reflected not just my emotions, but the subtle impact they had on her own experience. In this way, children serve as mirrors that show us the effects of our hidden emotions, revealing what we may think is invisible, but is, in truth, deeply felt by those we love most. Being mirrored by a child also requires courage. It is humbling to realize that our struggles, insecurities, and sorrow are not as private as we assume. It forces us to confront our humanity in its entirety, to see our own vulnerability through the eyes of someone we love, and to recognize that the way we navigate our emotions shapes the world around us. My daughter's observation demanded that I face my own heart honestly, that I acknowledge the sorrow I had long ignored, and that I consider how my emotional life influenced hers. The mirror of a child is a call to authenticity, a gentle but firm reminder that our emotions are neither private nor inconsequential. They are woven into the fabric of our shared lives. There is a profound lesson in learning to see ourselves through a child's eyes. Children notice what is real, not what is constructed. They respond to truth, empathy, and emotional resonance rather than appearances or explanations. When my daughter perceived the sorrow in my reflection, she was not judging or evaluating me. She was sensing a truth that had existed quietly for years. This truth, mirrored back to me, became a source of insight, teaching me that emotional awareness begins with observation and acknowledgement. Children show us what we often fail to see in ourselves, the depth of our feelings, the traces of unprocessed pain, and the resilience that persists even when we feel burdened. The mirror of a child can also foster transformation and connection. By seeing ourselves reflected in their perception, we are given the opportunity to engage in a new, deeper level of intimacy. My daughter's recognition of my sorrow invited a dialogue of empathy and understanding, even without words. It allowed me to share my experience in a way that was gentle, age-appropriate, and profoundly human. Through her perception, I learned that vulnerability can be met with love, and that expressing emotion openly can strengthen bonds rather than weaken them. Children, in their reflections, teach us that emotional honesty is not a weakness but a bridge to deeper relationships. Moreover, the child as a mirror reminds us of the cyclical nature of empathy. As they reflect our emotions back to us, they also model empathy in return, showing us how awareness of another's feelings can coexist with innocence and compassion. My daughter, by noticing the tears behind my smile, demonstrated a capacity for understanding that was intuitive and unfiltered. She mirrored my sorrow, but in doing so, she also mirrored the love, attention, and attunement that are essential to human connection. In her observation, I saw not only my own emotions reflected, but also the potential for teaching empathy through example, creating a cycle of awareness, care, and emotional resonance that could shape both of our lives. Finally, children as mirrors remind us of the power of presence. Healing, understanding, and growth often begin with simple observation, being present enough to notice, to see, and to acknowledge. My daughter's question was a testament to the fact that being truly present allows us to perceive hidden truths, to recognize what has gone unnoticed, and to respond with care and empathy. Through her reflection, I was invited to slow down, to pay attention, and to engage fully with my own emotions as well as with hers. The mirror she held up was not just a reflection of sorrow, it was a reflection of possibility, of awareness, and of the transformative power of seeing and being seen. In that quiet moment, I understood that children are not only the ones we guide and nurture, they are also mirrors reflecting our emotional truths, teaching us empathy, and showing us what we often fail to see in ourselves. My daughter's perception of the crying woman in the mirror was more than an observation. It was an invitation to self-awareness, a call to authenticity, and a gentle guide toward emotional growth. The child as a mirror is a reminder that the truths we carry within us are never entirely hidden, that love and perception can reveal even the quietest sorrows, and that healing, understanding, and connection often begin when we allow ourselves to be seen as we truly are.